Hi class, this is your quick video for Thursday, February 4th. Since we're totally in remote school today, I wanted to do one more quick little practice problem or set of practice problems with you regarding formula weight and percent composition. So here we go. Let's start with our first one here. This worksheet 3 is in today's Schoology folder. If we look at this first formula here, right, AL, and then we have a parentheses, NO3 are inside the parentheses, and there's a 3 outside the parentheses. Remember this 3 outside, that tells you to multiply everything that's inside, right? It tells you to multiply everything inside the parentheses. Right, multiply whatever's inside that parentheses. So we're going to start this. We're going to write down our elements that we see. We see an AL, we see an N, and we see an O. All right. We look up in our, how many do we have in our formula here? Well, the AL, there's not a number right after it, and it's not in parentheses, so we know we only have one of our AL atoms. And we look up in our periodic table, and we see each AL atom has a mass of 27. Right. Nitrogen, note we have one nitrogen inside the parentheses, so you're going to multiply it by this 3 that's outside the parentheses. 1 times 3, that tells us there are 3 nitrogens. And we know that each nitrogen has a mass of 14. And finally, how many oxygens? There are 3 oxygens inside the parentheses, 3 oxygens inside the parentheses, and then there's a 3 outside, so 3 times 3 tells you there's 9 oxygens. And we see from our periodic table, each oxygen weighs 16. So now that we have our elements, we have the quantity, how many of each element do we have, what does each element weigh? We got to do our multiplications. So we have 27 mass units coming from our aluminum. We have 42 mass units coming from our nitrogen. And what is 90 plus 54, 144 units coming from our oxygen. And to get the formula weight, right, we just have to add these all up. 793, carrier 1, 8, 10, 1, 213, if I did my math correctly there, right? Just add up all those numbers. I'm going to skip over Li3PO4 just because it's like a space on my whiteboard. Let's do this next one here. This one's a really complicated one, so if you hang with me through this, we should be in great shape. First, again, we're going to identify our elements. We have an N, we have an H, we have a C, we have another H. Well, we've taken care of H already. And then we have an O. So how many do we have? Again, remember this 3, it tells you to multiply everything inside. So we have 1 nitrogen inside our parentheses times 3 outside. We have 3 nitrogens. Right? Hydrogens, this is a 2-parter because we got it in 2 places. We've got 4 hydrogens inside the first parentheses times 3. So we're going to get 12 hydrogens from this first part. How many hydrogens do we have in the second part? We have 5 more. So we have 17 hydrogens here. Let's look at our carbons. There's a 6 right after the carbon. That tells you there's 6 of them. We've already done the H. And finally, we have 7 oxygens. Okay, so be careful if we have an element appearing twice like we do here, an H in the first ion, positive ion, and an H in the negative ion. So let's go ahead and calculate it out. Nitrogens we know are 14, hydrogens we know are 1, carbons we know are 12, and oxygens we know are 16. And again, that all comes from the periodic table. How much does each one weigh? Multiply them out. Right. And then we just, again, we add them all together. 2 plus 7 plus 2 plus 2, 3, carrier 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 5, 6, 7, and 7 is 14. Carrier 1, 243. Again, I'm not using a calculator, so if my numbers are off here, I apologize in the bottom. But that's just a quick way to do some percent composition. I'm sorry, to do some formula weights. Let's do a quick one on percent composition. Let's do a quick one on percent composition. So I'm going to do this calcium nitrate here. Right. Again, what I want you to do, write down the elements that you have. How many of each do we add? Again, the 2 here at the end only concerns itself with what's inside the parentheses. right? So that CA doesn't have has a number with it, so we know it's only one CA. How many N's do we have inside the parentheses? 1 multiplied by the 2 that's outside. We have 2 nitrogens. And so oxygen, three oxygens inside the parentheses multiplied by the 2 outside. Tells us we have 6 oxygens. Calcium, we're going to look it up on our periodic table, and we're going to see that it has a mass of 40. Nitrogen, 14, and oxygen, 16. Let's multiply our numbers through. 40, 28, and 96. Add our numbers together. 4 carrier 1, 5 plus 2, 7 plus 9, 16, 164. So now we know that our total formula weight is 164. It's 164. To do the percent composition, pretty easy. All right. What I want you to see when you do a percent composition, once you know how much comes from each atom. So after we've done this multiplication, the 1 times 40 gives us 40, 2 times 14 gives us 28. After we've done that multiplication, then we can do our percent compositions. And all we got to do is take these numbers, right? 40, we're going to divide it by our total formula weight of 164, right? And then we're going to, make that parenthesis a little bit nicer. 40 divided by 164, right? Then we're going to multiply by 100 simply to turn it into a percent. So if we type that into our calculator, let me grab my calculator here real quick. If we type that into our calculator, what do we see? 40 divided by 164 times 100. And we're going to come up with 24.39. Now, I want you to round this to the tenths place. So give me 1 decimal. So 24.39, that's going to round up to 24.4%. And what are we talking about here? This is our calcium. Right? So remember, these numbers, we're just going to use our how much came from each atom. We're not using the weight of each atom. We're not using the 40 and the 14 and the 16. We're using how much came after we've done the multiplication. The 40, the 28, and the 96. 28 divided by 164 times 100. 28 divided by 164 equals 17.1. Again, I want you to round it to that tenth decimal place, right? And this is our nitrogen. And how about our oxygen finally? 96 divided by 164 times 100. 96 divided by 164 equals, and that gets me 58.5. Let's just double check ourselves here really quick. Let's make sure our percents add up to 100. 4, 1, and 5, that gives us a 0. Carry our 1. 4 plus 1 is 5. 7 and 8, that's another 15. So we're going to carry a 2. 2, 4, 5, and 5, 100.0. So this one worked out really well. Now remember, because we're rounding to the tenths place here, right, then this number may be a little bit off, right? We could be close, but we might be a little bit off. So you might end up with a 99.9. You might end up with a 100.1. But you're going to end up with one of these 3 numbers, and that's just simply due to rounding errors. All right, guys, that's all I wanted to do for you real quick this morning. If I went too fast, please go back, replay the video, pause it as needed. If you have questions after watching the video, please join me today in our live class, which is really just office hours. Just come to the office hours Schoology conference. I'll be there. If you have a question, ask me. I have nothing formal to present beyond this. I want to spend the time answering your questions during the live class today. Thanks a lot, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.